Everyone saw her as quiet. No one saw what quiet was hiding. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw the first punch. But when they pushed her too far, the girl they thought was weak broke them without saying a word. This is the story of how silence became strength, and how the queen of the school lost her crown in front of everyone. The yellow school bus hissed to a stop in front of Northridge High. The doors creaked open, and students spilled out, shouting, laughing, already in their familiar cliques. No one noticed the girl who stepped off last. One strap of her backpack hung low, and her eyes didn't look left or right. Her face was unreadable. Nia Matthews paused on the sidewalk, her breath steady, her mind focused. New school, new state, same plan. Keep her head down, finish senior year, and leave unnoticed. That had always worked before. She scanned the brick building. It looked like every other high school she'd tried to blend into. Hallways filled with noise, students filled with judgment. The same rules still applied. Don't speak unless you have to, don't react, don't stand out. But Nia had forgotten one thing. You can't stay invisible when people are looking for someone to break. As she entered the building, the energy changed. She felt it, the eyes, the whispers. Being the new girl always drew attention, but being a quiet black girl in a mostly white school, that was different. Their eyes didn't just look. They measured, assumed, feared. Would she be angry? Would she be loud? Would she be a threat? Nia kept walking. Her locker was near the main hall. She spun the dial on the lock, trying not to notice the laughter behind her. But then she saw them. Sloane Whitmore. The name had already been mentioned on the bus ride over. Blonde, confident, surrounded by followers. The queen bee. The kind of girl who didn't just run the school, she decided who did and didn't exist. Flanking her were Harper and Jade, her loyal shadows. Next to them stood Logan, Sloane's older brother and star football player, who looked like he'd never been told no in his life. And then there was Dex. Skinny, sharp-eyed, always loud. The kind of guy who joked too much to hide how cruel he really was. Nia turned back to her locker, trying to shut them out, but she felt Sloane's gaze before she even heard her voice. Judging, calculating. Her first class passed quietly, but the whispers didn't stop. She's from Chicago. She probably thinks she's hard. She's definitely one of those girls. At lunch, Nia sat alone, in the far corner of the cafeteria, not looking for a seat, not asking anyone to join. She opened her juice, ate her sandwich, tuned out the noise. But the laughter shifted. It grew louder, sharper, directed at her. Well, well, look who decided to sit all alone. Sloane's voice rang across the cafeteria. Smooth, icy, cruel. Nia didn't look up. Ah, is the new girl shy? Harper chimed in. She probably thinks she's better than everyone, Jade added, loud enough for tables nearby to hear. The cafeteria hushed, watching, waiting for a reaction. Nia took a slow sip of her juice. Then Dex grinned. Maybe she doesn't speak English. More laughter. Logan leaned against her table. Or maybe she's just dumb. Even more laughter. But Nia didn't move, didn't look up, didn't flinch. Sloane needed a reaction. That's how she kept control. So she reached over and flicked Nia's juice, spilling it all over her tray. The entire cafeteria froze. Nia inhaled quietly. She set her fork down, wiped her hands with a napkin, then calmly stood up, picked up the tray, and walked to the trash. Behind her, laughter rose again, but it wasn't the same. There was tension in it, uncertainty. Because before she left, Nia looked back. Not angry, not humiliated, just still, calm. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Sloane Whitmore felt something she couldn't explain. Doubt. The tension from the cafeteria didn't fade. It followed Nia through the rest of the day, like a ghost trailing her shadow. By the next class, people were whispering behind their books, texting under their desks. It should have been a win for Sloane. Another new girl publicly humiliated. But something about it felt off. Nia hadn't looked broken. She hadn't even looked bothered. It was like she had expected it. That rattled Sloane more than she wanted to admit. At her desk, Sloane tapped her perfectly manicured nails against the surface, ignoring whatever the teacher was saying. Harper leaned in. That was weird, right? She didn't even get mad. Sloane forced a laugh. She's pretending. Trust me, she's scared. But Harper didn't sound convinced. Neither did Jade, who was unusually quiet. Across the room, Logan stretched and yawned. You look tense, sis. Sloane glared. Shut up. He smirked. If she thinks she's untouchable, we just push harder. Everyone breaks eventually. Dex nodded, bouncing his leg. Yeah, maybe she needs a real welcome. The words sank in. Sloane didn't respond, but something dark flickered behind her eyes. The girl was calm, too calm, and that wasn't acceptable. The next morning, Nia could feel it in the air before she even stepped off the bus. The energy had shifted. She wasn't just the new girl anymore. Now she was a challenge. As she walked into Northridge High, the stares lingered longer. The whispers were louder and different. She really just walked away. She didn't even blink. What if she's dangerous? Nia didn't respond. She didn't need to. In gym class, things escalated. First, Harper, accidentally, bumped into her shoulder during warm-ups. Then Jade shoved past her during stretches. During basketball, Logan swiped the ball from her with extra force, knocking her off balance. Dex snorted. Yo, new girl, ever play a real game before? Nia didn't answer. She picked herself up, again and again. Sloane stood by the bleachers, arms crossed, watching, waiting. But no matter how many times Nia was shoved, tripped, or laughed at, she didn't break. She didn't even look annoyed. It wasn't weakness. It was restraint, and that made it worse. Sloane clenched her fists. By lunch, she was done playing games. Nia had barely picked up her tray when she felt it. A sudden shove from behind. Her foot slid forward. Her tray tipped. Food crashed to the floor. Silence swept the cafeteria like a wave. Then laughter, loud, cruel. Sloane stepped forward, smiling like she'd already won. Ah, poor baby. You need help cleaning that up? Jade and Harper cackled. Logan leaned back with a smirk. Dex was already recording. Other students reached for their phones. This was the moment. The new girl was supposed to snap, cry, run. Instead, Nia stood still for just 1 second. Then slowly, she looked up and smiled. A small, quiet smile, but enough because Sloane felt it. In her chest. A tiny chill creeping up her spine. The room kept laughing, but suddenly it felt forced. Unsure. Nia bent down, picked up her tray, dropped the mess into the trash, then walked away, no words, no reaction. But when she turned that final glance toward Sloane, there was something in her eyes that wasn't anger. It wasn't fear, it was patience. And for the first time, Sloane realized she wasn't in control. That night, Nia sat at the kitchen table, her dinner untouched. Her father, David Matthews, leaned against the counter sipping coffee. His eyes kept flicking her way, reading her silence. He knew that look. You want to tell me what happened? He asked. Nia exhaled slowly. The cafeteria scene played back in her head. I didn't want to fight, she said finally. David nodded. But you're thinking about it. Her fingers curled slightly. I don't want to be that girl. The one who explodes, but I also don't want to be the one they think they can break." She paused. I walked away, and it made things worse. David set his cup down, crossed his arms. "You walked away because you didn't want to hurt them. That's strength. But you know how this works, Nia. Some people don't stop until they get what they want, or until someone stops them." She looked up at him, her expression heavy. "I made a promise, Dad. After last time." He didn't flinch. "I know." They both remembered. The boy who ended up in the hospital, the headlines, the fallout. "You're not a weapon," he said softly. "But I trained you to protect yourself, and I trust your judgment." He stepped forward. "You don't start fights, Nia. But if they bring it to your door, you finish them." That night, Sloane couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the scene over and over. The food on the floor, the laughter, Nia's calm expression. And then, that smile. That small, patient smile that didn't belong in a cafeteria full of bullies. That didn't fit the script. Sloane twisted under her blankets. It wasn't supposed to go like that. People had laughed, sure, but the whispers afterward were different. She didn't even care. She didn't look scared. She smiled at Sloane. Some had even sounded impressed. That made Sloane sick to her stomach. The next morning, a new plan was already in motion. She had backup. Harper, Jade, Logan, Dex. Everyone was on board. They weren't just going to embarrass the new girl this time. They were going to end her little act for good. By second period, the whole school had heard it. After school, behind the gym. No teachers, no cameras, just a conversation. But everyone knew what that meant. So did Nia. She felt it the moment she walked in. The stares were heavier now, not mocking, not even curious. Pity. People avoided her eyes. Some murmured her name like a warning. Others just watched, waiting for a show. She had seen this before. New city, different faces, same game. She'd spent years avoiding fights, controlling the fire inside her. But people like Sloane never understood silence. They thought it meant weakness. When the final bell rang, Nia didn't hesitate. She walked the length of the hallway with her bag slung tight, footsteps steady, her expression unreadable. Behind the gym, the cracked pavement was already crowded. At least 20 students stood in a half circle, phones ready. Some whispered, some smirked. Most just watched. In the middle stood Sloane, arms crossed, chin high, fake smile sharp as glass. Harper and Jade flanked her, tension in their posture. Logan stood nearby, cracking his knuckles like he was warming up for practice. Dex bounced from foot to foot, recording already. Nia stopped just short of the circle. She didn't look nervous. She didn't even blink. Sloane raised an eyebrow. "Wow, you actually showed up. I figured you'd run again." Nia's voice was calm, even. "I wasn't running." Sloane scoffed. "You didn't even stand up for yourself." Nia tilted her head slightly. "You think food fights count as real fights?" That made a few students chuckle, but Sloane's jaw tightened. "Oh, don't worry," she said sweetly. "We'll make it real." She stepped forward. Nia's voice sharpened, but she didn't raise it. "I'm here to warn you." Sloane blinked. "Warn me?" Logan and Dex exchanged glances. Harper and Jade looked unsure. "I'm not here to threaten you," Nia said. "I'm telling you, you don't want to do this." Sloane laughed, but it cracked a little. "That's cute. The new girl thinks she's scary." Logan stepped up beside her. "You done talking, or do we get started?" Sloane nodded toward him. "Show her how we handle fake tough girls." Logan grinned, with pleasure. He stepped forward, towering over Nia. easily 6 inches taller, muscles built from years of football. "You'll barely feel it," he joked, winding up for a punch. But it never landed. In a blink, Nia moved. She didn't flinch, didn't dodge. She stepped inside his swing, grabbed his wrist mid-motion and twisted. Hard. Logan's body turned sideways, off balance. Then, boom. He hit the pavement so fast the crowd gasped in one voice. Air rushed from his lungs in a painful grunt. For a second, nobody moved. Logan lay there, stunned, his eyes wide, his pride shattered. Nia stepped back, calm, centered. "I warned you," she said softly. Dex hesitated. Then, out of pride or fear of looking weak, he charged. "Lucky hit," he shouted. But Nia didn't need luck. She let him come. At the last second, she sidestepped, fluid, precise. One hand caught his arm. She twisted, turned, and locked his elbow behind his back. Dex let out a yelp, high-pitched and panicked. Then she let go. He stumbled away, clutching his arm, dazed. The crowd was silent now. No laughter, no phones moving, just stillness. Sloane's heart pounded against her ribs. Her hands trembled. She had lost control. Sloane's hands curled into fists. This wasn't happening. Logan was still gasping on the ground, and Dex stood frozen, his arm slightly limp, face pale. Jade and Harper said nothing. They weren't laughing, they weren't smiling. They weren't even standing close to Sloane anymore. And Nia, she hadn't moved since the last throw. She stood tall, hands loose by her sides, calm as ever, like none of this had required any effort. The crowd watched in silence, holding their breath. Nia turned to Sloane. Her gaze was steady. "Do you still think I was running?" Sloane opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her voice failed her. For the first time in her life, Sloane Whitmore was speechless. Nia's tone didn't rise. She wasn't angry. She didn't shout. But her next word sliced deeper than any scream. "You thought this was about power," she said. "But the truth is, you were never strong to begin with." It hit Sloane like a slap. She staggered a half-step back, her pride unraveling like thread. Then Nia turned. Just like that. She walked away, not fast, not triumphant, just done. Sloane stood in the middle of the crowd, frozen. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had heard it. And worst of all, they weren't looking at her anymore. They were looking at Nia, respectfully, some in awe, some even smiling. Sloane's vision blurred. Her chest ached with something she hadn't felt in years. Humiliation. It was unbearable. She snapped. Without thinking, without planning, she lunged forward and reached for Nia's hair, desperate to grab, to pull, to do something that would give her power back. But she never got the chance. Nia's hand caught her wrist in midair, effortless. Still not looking at her, Nia just held Sloane's arm there, firm, unshaking. Sloane froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her breath caught in her throat. Then, slowly, Nia turned to face her. The full weight of that calm, unbothered gaze hit Sloane like a punch to the soul. Nia leaned in, just enough so only Sloane could hear. "You don't have power over me," she whispered, "and you never will." Then she let go. Sloane stumbled backward like her strings had been cut. She stood there, in front of everyone, empty. Nia didn't wait for a reply. She walked away, again. But this time, the silence that followed wasn't tense. It was final. A truth everyone felt but no one dared to say out loud. The throne Sloane had sat on for years. Shattered. Logan and Dex said nothing. They didn't even look at her. Jade and Harper stayed where they were. No longer at her side, not even close. The crowd wasn't staring at Sloane with fear or admiration anymore. They stared with pity. And somehow, That was worse. The next morning, Northridge High felt colder. Not literally, but to Sloane, it was like the air itself had turned against her. She walked the halls with her usual designer bag, chin lifted, shoulders squared. But everything had changed. She could hear it in the whispers behind her. She really tried to swing on her again. Nia didn't even break a sweat. Sloane's done. The power she once held, gone. In the cafeteria, her usual table was quiet. Harper scrolled through her phone without saying a word. Jade picked at her food. Logan and Dex sat at a different table. Still bruised, still quiet. No one came over. No one offered her a seat or a smile. Sloane sat stiffly, barely touching her lunch. Her eyes darted across the room. To Nia, sitting at a far table, alone, just like always. But not really alone. People glanced at her now, nodded. Basketball players who used to joke around passed and gave her respectful nods. Girls who had once ignored her now stole second glances. Nia didn't care. She didn't engage. She didn't gloat. She just sat there eating calmly, like nothing had happened. But something had, and everyone knew it. Sloane clenched her fork until her knuckles turned white. Across the room, Nia didn't even glance her way. She wasn't basking in victory. She wasn't relishing the attention. She was simply existing, at peace, and that made it worse. Sloane could feel her grip slipping, on everything. The school that once revolved around her was now shifting in a new direction. Conversations that used to pause when she entered now continued like she wasn't there. Students no longer made room in the hall. No one rushed to greet her. They weren't afraid anymore, and no matter how many times she replayed it in her mind, she couldn't change it. Because Nia hadn't just won a fight, she'd redefined what strength looked like. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the first punch. She didn't ask for control. She earned it, through calm, through patience, through complete mastery of herself. And Sloane? She had exposed herself for what she really was, a girl who needed others to feel strong. But now, no one followed. She could feel eyes on her back, watching, judging, or worse, ignoring. The cafeteria felt too loud, too bright, too unfamiliar. Then, a shadow fell across her table. Sloane looked up, and her breath caught. Nia stood there, tall, centered, still. She didn't sit. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look angry. She just looked at Sloane, like she saw everything. And then simply, "We're done." Her tone wasn't cruel. It wasn't cold. It was final. A statement that closed the book. Sloane felt her throat tighten. Everyone was watching. Again. Except this time, no one expected her to win. Nia didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked away, again. But this time, she didn't walk away from the fight. She walked away from Sloane. From everything that used to matter. And that was the biggest loss of all. At the far table, Nia sat alone again. But the atmosphere was different. She wasn't being avoided anymore. People hesitated as they passed, unsure whether they could sit with her. Some nodded, others whispered, some just watched with quiet respect. But Nia didn't care. She hadn't come here to be popular. She hadn't come here to teach lessons. She came to finish what she started, and now she had. There were no cheers, no applause, no headlines, just peace. And after everything she'd been through, peace was enough. So now the question is, was Nia right to walk away at first? Or should she have stood her ground from the very beginning? And what would you have done if you were her? Let us know in the comments below. We want to hear your thoughts. If this story hit you hard, if it made you feel something, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because there are more stories coming. Stories that speak without screaming. stories that stay with you long after the video ends.